It depends on how they're implemented. Some of it could come, as I've said, through attrition. Some of the cuts will come by reorganizing state government. As Bernie has well pointed out, probably the largest area that I've talked about reducing what we do is the State Board of Education, a bureaucracy that I think has grown beyond its ability to assist and become more of a detriment. That would be one of the more challenging areas. Of course, as you know, one of the challenges that we're facing is with Governor Quinn's secret agreement with AFSCME. We've got to give you a full answer to that. We need full legal interpretation to what's going on there. We've tried for, and so has Senator Baumke tried, to get actual numbers on where we are, what the movement has been from Chicago to Springfield to Chicago and so forth, which is one of the reasons that I've said I need an audit. We don't know who's employed where, what's necessary, what's not necessary. In discussions I've had with the Auditor General's office, we will ask the General Assembly in the first day of the veto session to pass a resolution asking the Auditor General to complete a business audit. That will give us the information that we need to drill down to where our highest priorities will be. I'm very disturbed by, I have to tell you though, I'm very disturbed, I hope you are, by the secret deal that Governor Quinn entered into with the AFSCME leadership that I think is a lose-lose. It's a lose for the state of Illinois. It's a lose for even AFSCME employees. Not a lot of difference, except for Holland's audits are about 2 years late. And given the fact, I mean, unprecedented irresponsibility when it comes to the last two budgets. The legislature abdicated its responsibility. The governor abdicated his. I think it was over $3 billion in discretionary spending in the previous budget. Now they've given the governor so much discretion that he can create a $75 million Put Illinois Back to Work continuation program at the expense of social services and human services that we're responsible for. You don't know what he's doing. In my discussions, we could, within 2 to 3 months, we could have a pretty good drill down. Because the Auditor General has all the background information, he's the best likely individual to get this done expediently at least resource cost. And he's done this for other governors, by the way. I don't believe Governor Quinn asked for it when he came in, but he has done it for other governors. And it would give us up-to-date information that would allow people we appoint to run state agencies to redetermine the priorities, and they can't do it without that information. I want to reinvigorate Illinois' economy to bring jobs. Let's face it, the estate tax, the death tax penalty imposed by Blagojevich and Quinn have pushed one of the fastest growing segments of our economy out of Illinois. We are a net out-migration state, one of the largest in the country. Why? Well, if you retire and your wealth is above $2.5 million, your accountant or your retirement advisor is going to tell you go to Florida or go to some state that is going to impose a death tax penalty on you. And you know what? They've left. Now, they've raised their families, they've developed their careers, and they would like to live their retirement years out here, but they have choices they can make, and they've made them. And one of the reasons that we are the largest net out migration state is because Illinois has been an uncompetitive place to live your retirement years. And when they leave, the law prohibits them from spending more than 6 months here. And when you don't spend time here, you can't spend money. And our economy suffers. No, we don't tax retirement income, and that's one of the reasons we can't. So a leveler playing field, they wouldn't leave. They don't want to spend more than 6 months in Florida, many of them. But we force them to. It's simple math that people will make that decision, just as I've called for making the gas products more competitive. You go around and talk to a border community, and you ask them how hard it is to sell gas in Illinois as opposed to a neighboring state, you lose. So these are reductions that will actually drive economic opportunities, create jobs and revenues for Illinois. We can do it with union wages. If you go around and talk to manufacturers who are union and non-union, they can compete in Illinois. One of the biggest advantages we've got is our geographical presence. Shipping refrigerators is a big cost to refrigerators. when you're located where we are. Now, we have a problem with skilled labor right now. You go around and talk to a lot of people, which is, we're getting off track, but if we're going to solve the job problem, we've got to have our schools better positioning the labor force so they can enter. You go around and talk to people in the manufacturing business, and they'll tell you, we need welders, we need machinists. And whether they be union or non-union jobs, there's a market out there for that. We've abdicated that responsibility by not directing our community colleges to get better involved in the high schools so that someone could leave high school with a 2-year associate's degree in the skill that's needed. But these are all areas that can be done. But back to your question, let's go this. I believe the tax incentives that we're providing are ones that will spur economic opportunity and restore Illinois to a job-creating state. Now, yes, that means cuts. You talked about a big deficit. In most organizations, the first thing we try to solve is what's our structural deficit, which is a 1 year. What's the revenues that come in a 12-month cycle, and what's the expenditures? That appears to be somewhere around $5 billion, according to the information we've got. Depends on revenues next year. It depends on some other things. The other $6 billion in unpaid bills that are rumored need to be paid back, which means you've got to further reduce spending so you free up revenues to pay those back in a timely fashion. And I've said 2.5 years would be an ideal way. So that's the plan that I have. What was asked in Cranes was, are you open to borrowing money to secure the pension fund? Now, the point being here is that we've borrowed the money. It's just that we borrowed it from the citizens of Illinois. And if it was less expensive to borrow it in the private markets as opposed to lost returns, would you be open to a discussion? Now, I said very clearly, I don't know that you could go anywhere and borrow $50 billion. My first solution to the pension system is to craft a system that allows us to afford to live up to the liabilities that have been incurred, to honor the benefits that people have earned to date. And it's not the employees' fault that they didn't, because they paid into the system. But over the last years, Blagojevich and Quinn have failed to pay into the system, and now we're sitting with a system that has $75 billion in unfunded liabilities, over half of which have been accumulated in the last 8 years. Think about that. Half of the unfunded pension liabilities under the failed leadership of Blagojevich and Quinn. Now, we have to solve this, or it will implode our government. And someone's going to have to stand up and say enough is enough. Let me go back to what I want to do. What I want to do is live up to the obligations that people have earned. I mean, one of the major reasons I voted against 7 of the last 8 budgets was because of the failure to recognize those obligations. And I believe we have to live up to those obligations. I want to. I'm not here to debate the legalities of it. I hope it never comes to that. I need to see the audit and need to talk about what we need in state services. We need a comparison of private to public pay. We need to be real about where we are. But, as far as we've seen, it's a document that says, I'll tie the hands of the next governor to not lay anybody off in exchange for you coming up with savings at X amount. Well, where's the savings, first of all? But it's unconscionable and scandalous that this would happen. I think you have to think about this in the realm of what happened. I sat in that building over there for 2 hours in the endorsement session. I didn't have a state-employed budget director, the person who negotiates the contract with me, but the governor did. And within what we understand is practically before the sunset, a deal was cut, a deal that I think Rod Blagojevich would be jealous of. It was cut to tie the hands of the next governor to receive an endorsement. There is no greater incident of pay-to-play politics than that, and Illinois can't afford the continuation of that. Completely untrue. Completely untrue.
Because you didn't know, or because it wouldn't benefit the business?
Neither, both. I did. I don't know. I did not know where it was. I've made that clear. But it did not benefit our business. And I think if the Chicago Tribune's editorial board, who looked into the articles that Quinn is misquoting, would have believed it to be true, they wouldn't have endorsed me as well as they did. These incidents clearly had no conflict. I never have voted for anything, knowingly or not knowingly, to my knowledge, that had a conflict of interest. I've taken thousands of votes. And Quinn is in a desperate mode of a campaign. He's behind. And he's, again, distorting the truth because of the desperation of his campaign. I point to the fact that, do you believe the Chicago Tribune would have endorsed a candidate after they looked into it that did something inappropriate?
They really don't.
Education funding has doubled the pace of inflation over the last several years, according to numbers we've seen. Everyone's going to have to share in this. It doesn't mean what Governor Quinn says, that teachers will be laid off. It doesn't mean that property taxes will go up. It means that maybe the local level has to reconfigure what they're doing. It's less than a 0.3% reduction. I mean, as I've said it before, and I'll say it again. I'll say it again. There are school districts that are giving out bigger pay raises than that this year. Now, most businesses haven't seen a pay raise for their employees in 4 years, and many of them took reductions beyond 10% to keep their job. I'm not saying it's easy, but I am saying I will not raise taxes because that will kill jobs. I will have the discipline to balance the budget, and I will treat every area of state government fairly. Governor Quinn, on the other hand, if you recall in his budget address, attacked 3 areas. Education, over $1 billion, and didn't bother to ask the State Board of Education to reconfigure its administrative spending. He attacked municipalities, a 33% cut to public safety, because that's what mayors will tell you they'd have to do. And he attacked state troopers, a 33% cut to public safety. Coupled with his early release program, I'm starting to wonder what makes this guy tick. The legislature is looking for leadership on the second floor. We haven't had any for 8 years. I'm not a clone of Jim Edgar, but they're looking for someone like Jim Edgar who will stand up and say, this is all we're going to spend, guys. We can haggle over where we're going to spend it. Hopefully it'll be done in a way that helps Illinois' economy, children, public safety, the best possible. It will be done in a way that helps that, but it'll meet the highest priorities. But this is all we're going to spend. There hasn't been any discipline or any leadership on the second floor. Be it Republican or Democrat, these are collective observations from the legislature that needs to be incorporated. And as governor, I'll provide the leadership and the discipline, working with the legislature in a bipartisan way, regardless of Madigan's speaker or Cross or Radonia's president or Culleton, work with both parties to make sure that we're not spending more than we have, and that we're collectively reasoning ourselves to meet the highest priorities. I will tell you, though, that there's going to be a different approach to spending in that in the past 8 years, spending is based on political gain. It's time that we started looking at economic gain in spending and what really drives and where we can best spend the resources, because we're spending a lot of money, where those resources can best be spent, taking into effect the unintended and the intended consequences on Illinois' economy.